Kazuma was a shut-in loser who died a pathetic death and got isekai'd into another world. However, after meeting a freaky goddess, he forces her to be his teammate to form the strongest adventuring party and cracks everyone. It all started on the day that Kazuma decided to stop being a worthless shut-in and go outside to touch grass. On his walk home, he spots a girl who is about to get rammed hard by truck Kun, so he quickly jumps in to save her. The next moment, he finds himself in the afterlife, and a blue-haired goddess named Aqua greets him and confirms he's dead. Hearing that, Kazuma asks about the girl he saved, and when Aqua reveals that the girl is alive, Kazuma is glad, now knowing that his death is not in vain. However, the goddess reveals that the girl would have lived anyway, as what was heading towards her was a tractor, and not the legendary truck Kun. That shocks Kazuma, and Aqua puts salt to the wound by laughing about how he actually died out of shock, and that the doctors even laughed at his death as he peed his pants to a slow tractor. That annoys Kazuma, but Aqua quickly changes the subject by offering him to start his new life in another game-like world where he must defeat the Devil King. After that, Aqua offers him a wide variety of overpowered abilities to bring, but while Kazuma is choosing, Aqua annoyingly urges him to hurry up to not waste her godly time. Pissed by her attitude, Kazuma suddenly chooses to bring her with him to the new world. That confuses Aqua, and in that moment, another goddess pops up and declares that Kazuma's request has been granted. She says that she will take over Aqua's job, and summons a portal to transfer them both. Aqua starts crying and begging her to do something, but Kazuma laughs at her for being outsmarted by a shut-in loser like him. The portal drags them both away to the new world, and while Kazuma is excited to start this new adventure, Aqua starts crying so much that it pauses the anime. Kazuma quickly calms her down and says that, as a gamer, he knows what to do. The first thing he does is take them to an adventurer's guild, and when they get there, Aqua praises him for actually being reliable despite being an otaku with no hose, which Kazuma takes as an insult. They go to the receptionist with outrageous proportions, Luna, and register as adventurers, but Luna asks them to pay the fee first. Being broke like you losers, they both get depressed, but Aqua gets an idea to use her goddess status to get some dough. She approaches an old priest and introduces herself as the water goddess Aqua, before asking the old man to prove his belief through money. However, the old man says that he believes in the goddess of Eris, but still gives Aqua money out of pity, while scolding her for pretending to be a goddess. Aqua returns ashamed after receiving money from an Eris supporter, and they both go back to Luna to become adventurers. To start, Luna hands them an adventurer's card and asks them to measure their strength using a magic crystal. Kazuma goes first, and the crystal shows in his adventurer's card his status that he's a weak bum who has extremely high luck.
Only language you speak is failure!
But when it's Aqua's turn, Luna is in shock seeing that all her stats are at maximum, and everyone there rejoiced at having a new high-level adventurer. While Kazuma is a bit jealous seeing her anime protagonist-like powers, he still feels hopeful that his new life as an adventurer will be amazing. However, for the next few days, he spends his time with Aqua laboring around, partying till they puke, and getting paid dirt cheap while sleeping inside a horse's stable. That frustrates Kazuma, who has high hopes, and when he brings it up to Aqua, that makes her think and realize that they need to defeat the Devil King so she can get her job back as a goddess again. She promises then and there that they will change, and they decide to go on a mission to start their adventurous life properly. However, when the next day comes, Aqua is busy sleeping till noon, while Kazuma stares at her, depressed, wondering why he chose to believe her in the first place. When she wakes up, she greets him without guilt, and he can only sigh at her actions. Kazuma then asks why there are no conflicts or demonic attacks in the city for them to face, and Aqua explains that the city they are in, Axel, is the city for beginners, and it is located the furthest away from the Devil King's castle. She then stands up and urges Kazuma to go on a quest, and while he doubts her conviction, he chooses to believe her enthusiasm, knowing that she is a goddess. The quest they take is defeating 5 giant toads, after the civilians around the area reported that the giant toads have caused issues by eating their goats, which causes the farmers to lose profit, and they are in need of adventurers to handle them. But just in the first minute, Kazuma is regretting his decision, as a giant toad is plopping after him and wants to eat him. He begs Aqua to do something to help him, but all she does is laugh at him for running around like a headless chicken, and tells him to start calling her the goddess if he wants her help. However, while she's busy yapping with her eyes closed, one giant toad pops in front of her and eats her whole, forcing Kazuma rush in and defeat the toad to save her. With her whole body drenched in slime like after a night with Johnny's sins, she starts thanking Kazuma while he is disgusted by her smell.
Brother,
He quickly switches her attention to the other toads they need to handle, and suggests that they retreat for now. However, she refuses to go back to town after being defiled, reasoning that her believers in the religion of Axis will lose their faith if they see their goddess full of slime. But all Kazuma here is nonsense, considering that he's seen her drinking like a total drunk and partying hard like a total degenerate. Just then, out of anger, she charges headfirst and alone into one of the giant toads and uses her god blow to destroy the toad to smithereens, showcasing an animation that One Punch Man would be jealous of. But in an anticlimactic fashion, the attack did nothing, and she tries to reason with the toad, which only gets her eaten, forcing Kazuma to save her once more. Later, they regroup at dinner in the tavern, where Aqua suggests that they add people to their adventurers' party. Kazuma thinks it's a stupid idea, knowing that they are only beginners who have nothing to offer. But Aqua insists and believes that everyone would want to join their party, considering that she's an archpriest with maximum stats all over. The next day, they wait for any adventurers to come and join their team, but after a lot of waiting, nobody pops up. Even after Aqua posted an invitation on the guild board, full of her fake testimonies about how their party is the best party in town, on par with a Diddy party. In desperation, Aqua starts crying, and Kazuma tries to calm her down. But in that moment, a one-eyed wizard with a massive aura pops in, declaring herself the perfect fit for their team. She introduces herself as Megumin, an arch-wizard who is the master of explosion magic, the most devastating type of offensive magic. She continues yapping about how she's so strong that she's capable of deleting the whole Jujutsu Kaisen universe, and Kazuma asks her if she's making fun of them. But Megumin assures them that she's not. Just then, Aqua notices her red eyes and asks if she's a crimson demon, and Megumin confirms that she is, but suddenly collapses. When asked why she's like that, Megumin explains that she hasn't eaten in a few days, so Kazuma decides to show her kindness by treating her to lunch. But before doing so, he asked her about her eye patch, and Megumin claims that her eye patch suppresses a world-bending, powerful magic in her eyes, which can be released if she takes it off. Kazuma is excited by that prospect, but Megumin disappoints him by saying that she's basically capping just to make herself look cooler. Hearing that, Kazuma pulls her eye patch from her while she begs for mercy, still thinking that she's making fun of them. But Aqua assures him that crimson demons like Megumin actually have powerful magic and weird names. That offends Megumin, who says that her clan doesn't have weird names. But when Kazuma asks what her parents' names are, she says some weird names that sound like brands of chips instead of actual names. After that, they check her adventurer's card, which can't be fake, and confirm that Megumin is actually a high-level wizard who possesses explosion magic. Both Aqua and Kazuma see potential in her, so they take her on their mission against the giant toads. There, they face two different giant toads in two different directions, and while Megumin aims at one, Aqua decides to charge at the other one, with eyes full of revenge after the slimy things they did to her. She charges up her God Requiem, a power that is built from love and sorrow, showcasing animation better than Blue Lock, but gets herself eaten again, proving that she's truly pathetic. However, Megumin charges up her explosion magic, shocking Kazuma with the intensity of her powers, and when she releases it at the giant toad, it creates an explosion on par with the Fat Man that was dropped in Japan, ensuring the toad is now hot and crispy, which impresses Kazuma. Suddenly, another toad wakes up from its sleep, and Kazuma quickly warns Megumin about it, but when he looks back, she's already slumped on the floor. She explains that her explosion magic caused so much magic power that it will take everything from her, meaning she can only use it once a day. Lying weak and useless, the toad approaches her and eats Megumin, right alongside Aqua, forcing Kazuma to save them and finishing the mission. Back in the town, both girls are slimy, and Kazuma has to carry Megumin on his back. He tells her that while her explosion magic is impressive, from now on, she can only use it during an emergency. She advised her to use other magics aside from it, but Megumin says that she can't use any other magic, which surprises the others. Aqua reasons that the Crimson Demons have powerful magic storage that they can pretty much use any other magic they want, but that is when Megumin says that she only wants to use explosion magic and only explosion magic, and that the reason she became an adventurer is to use explosion magic that she loves and nothing else. Hearing that, Aqua is impressed by her conviction, but Kazuma is annoyed by it, realizing that both girls in his party are useless. So he quickly tries to dismiss Megumin from his party and bid her farewell on her journey. But Megumin refuses to leave his party, saying that he will be lucky to have her, who has such powerful magic and doesn't even have to be paid for it. The two of them go back and forth with Kazuma trying to get her to leave, not wanting such a useless clown of a wizard in his team, while Megumin is begging him not to get rid of her, as all she wants is to use her explosion magic, and that she has been ostracized by other parties before. Just then, some bystanders witnessed the whole thing and misunderstood it, thinking that Kazuma is a degenerate who goons and covers girls in his slime before leaving them like trash. Hearing that, Megumin takes her opportunity and says loudly about how Kazuma was using toad goo while shaking the bed, but Kazuma accepts her and his team to shut her up. Afterward, while the girls take a bath, Kazuma receives the rewards from taking care of the toads, but when he counts the rewards, he realizes that it's not worth the trouble of going on an adventure with those two buffoons. He realizes that if he wants big rewards, he needs to take on a more dangerous mission, but he knows that he's not capable of doing such a thing. Just then, a blonde-haired knight approaches him after seeing his recruitment request, and at first glance, Kazuma folds to how beautiful she is. She introduces herself as Darkness, and wants to join his party, but in the middle of her speaking, she starts making happy noises like she's going to pound town, which both freaks out and turns Kazuma on. Darkness then asks Kazuma about what happened to his slimy party members, and when Kazuma mentions the giant toads, she almost screams hard, which confuses Kazuma. He feels in his gut that there's something about this woman that reminds him of Aqua and Megumin, so he warns her not to join his party, mentioning how they get paid like dirt and are noobs. However, Darkness admits that she's useless too, since she can't land a hit to save her life, which makes Kazuma realize that he was right about her being similar to his other party members in how useless they are. Suddenly, she presses her face right up to Kazuma and eagerly suggests that he should use her as his meat shield during battle, but due to her being too close and him being a virgin, Kazuma feels his heart going faster and his little Johnny turning bigger. He tries once more to reject her, saying that they could get eaten or even pounded like yams by goblins, but Darkness gets excited by that, and that makes Kazuma realize that not only is she useless, but she's also deranged to the core. The next day, he goes to the guild and finds Aqua entertaining strangers with her magical party tricks, which Kazuma sees as pointless skills. During lunch with Megumin, he learns that he can spend his level points to learn new skills, but he hasn't done so yet because he doesn't want to waste them on garbage abilities. Megumin explains that he needs someone to teach him a skill by showcasing it to him, and once he sees it, he can use his skill point and learn it. He starts thinking of what skill to learn, and when he mentions explosion magic, Megumin's eyes light up, and she heavily endorses him to learn explosion magic, the greatest magic of them all, according to her. Seeing her get carried away, Kazuma tells her to calm down, calling her a little girl, but that switches Megumin's mood, realizing that her lack of plump assets made him call her that. Later, as Kazuma wonders if there's any easy skill he can learn with his 3 points, Darkness pops up to talk to him again, wanting to continue their conversation from the previous night, which Kazuma is dreading. Once more, she asks to join his adventurers' party, and when Kazuma shuts her down on the spot, she starts making happy noises like she's doing the dirty. Just then, a friend of hers steps in and tells her to get a grip before she scares people away. The friend introduces herself as Chris, who is a thief, and Kazuma feels a wave of relief seeing how normal she is compared to the other weird chicks he met since getting reincarnated. Suddenly, Chris suggests that he uses his skill points to learn skills of a thief, and explains that she can teach him thief skills since they're easy to pick up and only cost a few points. Outside, she goes on to describe skills like enemy detection and lurk, but says her favorite is steal, which she believes will be perfectly suited for him. She goes on to demonstrate it by stealing his coin pouch right in front of him, and challenges him to learn the skill so he can steal the pouch back, even though there's a chance he could fail and lose his money. Kazuma is excited since this is the first adventure video game-like moment he's had since he got here. Chris then tells him to check his card and acquire the skill, and when he does so, he can feel it in his genes that he has unlocked a new skill. After that, she asks him to use it on her, explaining that she's carrying a dagger worth 400,000 eris, which Kazuma is excited to steal, but also some pebbles that make it harder for him by lowering his odds of getting the good item. Despite the horrible risk-to-reward ratio, Kazuma uses the steal skill on her, and when he does it, Chris suddenly feels something is missing. And when Kazuma sees what he stole, it is none other than her peach cover.
Bombastic side eye.
He starts celebrating like a degenerate maniac, while Chris begs him to return it, and Darkness can only watch with both excitement and being creeped out by it. Later, back at the guild, Kazuma returns with a flustered Darkness and a depressed Chris. When asked what happened, Darkness tells the others that Kazuma pulled off something that could get him arrested.
FBI, open up!
And Chris explains that he forced her to trade all her money for her plot cover, earning Kazuma dagger stares from everyone in the guild. Aqua asks if he actually learned any skills, and Kazuma demonstrates his steel again at Aqua, but it has no effect on her, and instead, it causes Megumin to lose her black lace plot cover. Megumin politely asks him to give it back, and Kazuma can't understand why the skill keeps stealing the same thing when it's supposed to be random. Seeing this degeneracy, Darkness jumps in and says that they need her in their party to prevent Kazuma from doing things like this in the future. But Kazuma rejects her again, switching on her happy noises once more. Aqua realizes she's the same girl who confronted him the night before, and when Megumin checks her card and finds out she's a crusader, she insists that they recruit her for her tank-like skills. Kazuma is still hesitant and explains that he plans to defeat the Devil King, and the journey is only going to get more dangerous. He tries to scare her off by saying that if she gets captured, the Devil King would use her like a doll for him to goon. But that excites Darkness even more, which confuses Kazuma. He then switches his attention to Megumin and reminds her how dangerous their path is, but instead of discouraging her, his speech fires her up even more to blow up the Devil King, as she takes pride in her explosion magic and her being a crimson demon. Just then, the guild calls all adventurers to gather at the front gate for an emergency quest, and the city erupts into chaos. When they get outside, Darkness vows to protect Kazuma, while Megumin steps forward and begins preparing her strongest spell. Kazuma asks what's happening, and Aqua explains that a swarm of flying cabbages suddenly descends on the city, and the adventurers rush to fight them off, which turns out to be a common occurrence in this world, since cabbages refuse to be eaten and instead migrate to die peacefully in remote areas. Luna announces that harvest season has arrived and that the guild will pay 10,000 eris for each cabbage head collected. Darkness tries to impress Kazuma by charging into battle, but she fails to land a single blow on the cabbages. But then, several cabbages surround two men, and she throws herself in front of them like a meat shield and takes every hit to save them. As her armor starts falling apart, people beg her to retreat, but she refuses to do so, and while everyone is touched by her heroic act, her true reason is that she likes getting watched while being pummeled. Right then, Megumin unleashes her spell, triggering a massive explosion that wipes out all the cabbages in the area and Darkness, who enjoys getting exploded in her face. That night, everyone enjoys a luxurious cabbage feast, and Aqua praises Darkness for her bravery. Darkness claims she's built differently and that protecting others with her body is the only thing she's good at. Megumin compliments Aqua for using her healing magic to keep the cabbages fresh and treat the injured, but they make it clear that Megumin's explosion magic was the biggest impact, as it takes out the entire swarm in one blast. They also praise Kazuma, who uses Lurk to sneak behind the cabbages and then steal to rip off their wings, making them easy to capture. Aqua crowns him the Great Cabbage Thief, which only makes him regret his life choices even more. Darkness once again begs to join the party, and Aqua points out that with her, they'll have 3 advanced class members. Kazuma admits to himself that he wouldn't mind if Darkness weren't completely lacking common sense, but she's just as weird as the rest of his team. Even so, he gives in and lets her join, fully aware that his life is about to get even more complicated. Some days later, Kazuma levels up her skills by adding a water spell to her arsenal, which convinces himself that he's at least a little more like a real adventurer now. Just then, Darkness pops up with a shiny new armor, and proudly tells him she fixes her armor using the money she earns from the cabbage harvest, but he barely reacts. She softly asks him to compliment her more often, but Kazuma says that his attention is all taken by the freaky arch-wizard who is gooning to her new magic staff. Meanwhile, Aqua is in the middle of an argument with Luna about not getting her full payout, but Luna explains that Aqua's harvest is mixed with lettuce, and since lettuce sells for cheap, her reward gets cut by a lot. With that, Aqua then strolls over to Kazuma and asks how much he earns, and he casually drops that he's now a millionaire, which shocks the others. He explains that the cabbages he collects are worth a fortune, and he caught a lot thanks to his absurdly high luck stat. Aqua immediately starts glazing him like he's more handsome than Brad Pitt, hoping he'll share some of his hard-earned wealth, but when he refuses to even give her a nickel, she starts begging him and admits that she already burned through all her money. Kazuma shuts her down again, reminding her that she's the one who insists rewards shouldn't be shared. Out of desperation, she threatens to expose all the times he gooned beside her in the stable, and Kazuma throws her some cash just to make her stop talking. Later, Kazuma finally buys proper adventurer clothes, and the girls comment that he actually looks like a real adventurer now. With their upgraded gear, the group decides to take on another quest to get more money, and the girls are all excited to go. But the moment Kazuma suggests a mission involving giant toads, Aqua and Megumin instantly start tweaking, remembering how they were both slimed hard. Then, they head to the quest board and spot a request to defeat a massive monster known as Black Fang. Kazuma notices that only high-level quests remain, and Luna explains that recently, several of the Devil King's top commanders have moved into the area, scaring off all the weaker monsters. That night, Kazuma brings this up with Aqua, pointing out that they won't get decent jobs until the threat near the town is dealt with, and Aqua listens while busy creating flowers, convinced she's about to be the next Bill Gates by selling them. The next day, Megumin drags Kazuma out to practice, warning him that she passes out after casting her spell and will need him to carry her home. On their way to a secluded spot, they stumble upon an abandoned castle, and Megumin decides it's the perfect target since no one lives there. After she fires off her spell, the castle goes up in flames, and she collapses on the spot, forcing Kazuma to carry her back. At the same time, Aqua works part-time to scrape together some money, while Darkness returns to her hometown to train. With nothing else to do, Megumin makes a habit of blowing up the abandoned castle every single day, and Kazuma carries her home afterward. This routine continues for days, and Kazuma even starts scoring each explosion. One day, Megumin unleashes her most impressive blast yet and gets Kazuma seriously considering learning explosion magic himself someday. One evening, Aqua comes back from work with a pile of leftover food. While she's excited about what tomorrow might bring, Kazuma admits he doesn't believe they'll ever manage to defeat the Devil King. He expresses how he thinks that it's because he doesn't have some broken, overpowered ability like the heroes in stories, and that someone more qualified should be sent in his place. Aqua panics at the thought that she'll never get to go home like this, but Kazuma bluntly tells her it's her own fault for being so useless despite being a goddess. Aqua bursts into tears, and Kazuma tells her she could at least teach him healing magic. She refuses, claiming that healing is the only thing that makes her even slightly relevant. Later, she sobs in front of the others, and Megumin asks Kazuma to go easier on her, while Darkness, ever the pain-loving degenerate, asks him to hit her instead. But Kazuma quickly catches on that Aqua is just faking her sadness to farm sympathy. Right then, Luna calls out an emergency and orders all adventurers to prepare for battle. Everyone rushes to the front gate, where a powerful Dolahan named Beldia arrives, who is the commander of the Devil King's forces stationed nearby. He demands to know which idiot keeps firing explosions at his castle every single day. The adventurers try to figure out who could possibly be responsible, and while they suspect it's someone who uses explosion magic, they accuse a random girl of the crime. However, Megumin can't stand the idea of someone else taking the blame, so she steps forward and confronts the knight herself. Beldia complains that if she wants to attack him, she should do it properly instead of blasting his castle from afar. He points out that he leaves the town alone since it only suffers minor fires, but warns that if this continues, he won't hold back anymore. Megumin doubles down and boldly claims that she targets him every day on purpose to lure him out, and boasts that her plan works and that he shows up alone because he falls for her trap. While Kazuma knows that she's yapping complete bull, everyone else believes her nonsense. The knight tells her to knock it off and turns to leave, but Megumin stubbornly declares that she'll keep attacking his castle. She calls for Aqua's help, and Aqua rushes forward, summoning her staff. Beldia isn't fooled and casts a deadly curse at Megumin, but Darkness throws herself in front of it and takes the hit instead. Beldia announces that with the spell he just did, Darkness will die in 1 week. He tells Megumin to reflect on her behavior, pointing out that none of this would have happened if she hadn't been a complete reckless idiot. Learning that the curse can only be lifted by following Beldia's orders, Darkness starts imagining that she'll have to gobble his glizzy and submit to him to survive. Getting way too excited about the idea, she turns to Kazuma for instructions on what to do. Before he can respond, she runs up to Beldia and humiliates herself even further, forcing Kazuma to drag her back. Beldia ignores her completely and tells Megumin that if she wants to save her friend, she must come to his castle alone, where he promises to lift the curse if she reaches his room, but warns that the path is guarded by his underlings. After he leaves, the weight of responsibility hits Megumin hard, and she decides to head for the castle right away to save her crusader friend. But then, Kazuma admits he shares some of the blame since he lets her blow up the castle day after day, so he insists on going with her. Megumin explains that normal weapons don't work on undead enemies, but she's secretly pleased that Kazuma will have to rely on her for once. Darkness tries to stop them, begging them not to risk their lives for her. But before the argument can go any further, Aqua casually casts a holy spell and lifts the curse from Darkness, leaving everyone completely stunned. While everyone celebrates, both Kazuma and Megumin are pissed, as they lost their chance to look like cool heroes. A few days later, from seeing Aqua sleeping lazily in the stables, Kazuma gets depressed, as he realizes that this is not the life he dreamed of when he got here. He dreams about raiding dungeons and slaying dragons, but instead, he's living like a regular bum salaryman on a grind. At the guild, Aqua is in a foul mood and demands they take on a quest, mostly because she's buried herself under a mountain of debt. She climbs all over Kazuma and begs for help, and he can't wrap his head around how a goddess can be this pitiful. He lets her choose the job, but the moment she points at a request involving a territorial war between a manticore and a griffin, he shuts it down for being completely out of their level. She settles for a job to purify a lake near Axel to drive away the alligators that are living in it. Hearing that, Kazuma is surprised she is capable of something like that, even telling her that she can keep the reward since she's basically doing the work all by herself. However, she explains that while she can purify any water she touches, cleansing an entire lake would take her hours, and monsters could easily attack her while she's busy channeling her divine power. So she asks the rest of the party to serve as her bodyguards, but Kazuma has a better and more efficient idea of renting a small iron cage from the guild and locking Aqua inside it to keep her away from danger. She accepts, and the crew drags the cage to the lake. They lower it down and let Aqua sit there by herself in the water to purify it, while the others just wait for the job to finish. As Aqua sits in the freezing water for hours, pouring her divine energy into the lake, the group casually chats about whether girls take a dump. Aqua confidently tells Kazuma that everyone knows girls don't poop, while Megumin proudly claims that crimson demons don't need bathrooms either. Darkness tries to play along with the lie, but being a total masochist, she fails to keep it up, and Kazuma has to calm her down. He refuses to buy their lies and jokes that next time he'll take a super long quest just to see how long they can keep up the act. While they are busy talking, alligators start circling the cage, biting at the bars and slamming into it. Aqua panics and fires off frantic purification spells. As Aqua endures the terror, Darkness starts getting saucy in the nether region, since the idea of getting mauled by alligators is something that she imagines having pleasure in.
Are you crazy?
Hours later, the lake finally shines with purity, and the alligators disappear. The group walks up to check on Aqua, only to find that she's completely emotionally broken. She starts sobbing and refuses to come out of the cage, even when Kazuma says she can keep all the money. She declares that she's going to live in the cage forever and begs them to carry her back to town inside it. Meanwhile, somewhere far away, a knight in shining armor, Kyoya, is battling against a dragon with his overpowered sword, and with his two little groupies and a goddess's blessing from before, he defeats the dragon. Later on, they go back to Axel, where the girls are glazing him for beating the dragon in one blow, but Kyoya is deep in thought, still reminiscing about his meeting with the goddess that sent him there, Aqua. Suddenly, he hears her voice, singing in the distance, so he rushes over and finds her trapped in a cage. As onlookers stare, Kazuma tells Aqua to come out because it's making them look awful, but she's so traumatized that she'd rather rot in the cage than face the world again. When Kyoya sees Aqua, his beloved goddess, being carried around like a wild beast, he charges in, smashes open the cage, and frees her. Kyoya calls her his goddess, and Aqua doesn't remember that, but when Kazuma reminds her of her godly status, she perks up from her depression and confidently announces herself as a goddess again before stepping out of the cage. However, when she looks at Kyoya, she doesn't know who this guy is, forcing her to explain that she's the adventurer she gave purpose and a sword to defeat the Demon King. Aqua brushes it off, saying that she forgot because she sent many people before him. Kyoya then asks what Aqua is doing in that world, and after hearing what happened, Kyoya confronts Kazuma for dragging Aqua into this world, but Aqua insists she actually doesn't mind, as she's having more fun than before. When Kyoya learns more about Aqua's living condition like living in a stable, he gets even more annoyed. When Kyoya looks around Kazuma, he sees the others and tells Kazuma that he should be grateful to be surrounded by powerful baddies like Darkness and Megumin. Still, Kazuma is annoyed by that statement, as all he can think about is Aqua being annoying, Megumin blowing things up, and Darkness begging to be hurt like a freak. Kyoya tries to recruit Megumin and Darkness into his own party to save them both, but both of them reject him flat out, finding him more embarrassing than charming. They try walking away, but Kyoya refuses to let it slide and challenges Kazuma to a duel, with Aqua on the line, and letting Kazuma get anything Kyoya owns if he wins. Kazuma accepts on the spot and immediately attacks him, before using his steel to take his legendary sword Graham and knocking him out with it. Kyoya's two little hoes, Crimea and Fio, start yelling at Kazuma, saying only Kiyoya can wield that sword, and Aqua confirms that it's true, but Kazuma decides to take it anyway. When they keep protesting, he shuts them up by threatening to use his steel and take the very thing they don't want to lose the most, which scares them off and disgusts Kazuma's party. The next day, Aqua storms into the guild to yell at Luna, after finding out most of her reward is deducted to pay for the cage Kiyoya breaks. Kiyoya shows up right after.
Here we go again.
Ready to accuse Kazuma of all kinds of degenerate behavior toward women based on the info he gets from Chris. Before he can finish, Aqua hits him and demands compensation for the destroyed cage. Kiyoya pays on the spot, and Aqua happily heads to the counter to buy herself a drink. Then, Kiyoya begs Kazuma to return his sword and offers to buy him the best blade in the shop in exchange. However, Kazuma casually reveals that he sold the sword for cash, and Kiyoya quickly runs off in total disbelief. After he's gone, Darkness asks why Kiyoya keeps calling Aqua a goddess, and Kazuma and Aqua finally decide to tell her the truth that she's the goddess of water, Aqua, of the Axis religion. But the girls think she's drunk for saying that. Just then, Luna calls for a citywide emergency and orders all adventurers to assemble at the gates. When they arrive, they come face to face with Beldia the Dullahan, who is furious that no one bothers to visit his castle after he waited. Kazuma's confused about why Beldia is upset, saying that they didn't do anything wrong. However, Beldia says that his castle is still getting blown up by Megumin every day since their last meeting, and Kazuma's blood boils at Megumin for still doing something so stupid. Megumin says that she has a reason, and expresses that while she was fine blowing up empty fields at first, but once she gets a taste of demolishing that castle, she can't stop herself anymore. Kazuma asks how she even makes it back after each blast, since she usually passes out, only to find out that Aqua has been helping her get home ever since he stopped accompanying her, which earns Aqua a scolding. However, Beldia says that something else angers him, and that is that they refuse to face him and let their own friend, Darkness, die to his curse. To his absolute shock, Darkness steps forward, very much alive, confusing Beldia. Aqua takes the opportunity to roast him for not realizing the curse is already lifted and casually fires off Turn Undead, sending a sharp shock of pain through the Dullahan. It shocks Beldia to learn that someone as overwhelmingly powerful as Aqua lives in Axel, so he quickly summons a legion of undead knights, ordering them to slaughter the whole town. However, instead of attacking civilians, the undead immediately swarm toward Aqua like simps, instinctively drawn to her divine presence. Screaming her head off, Aqua sprints through the streets, and Kazuma claims that the undead must be looking for salvation from a goddess so they can go to the afterlife. Aqua ends up looping back toward the adventurers, causing everyone to scatter in panic, and with only Kazuma still beside her, the two weave through the chaos as the undead chase them down. Kazuma begs Aqua to do something about the horde, but she panics and says her magic isn't working on them. Taking advantage of the opening, Megumin climbs to higher ground and prepares her explosion. Once Aqua and Kazuma dive out of the blast zone, Megumin detonates a massive spell that wipes out the gathered undead. The other adventurers erupt in cheers, and Megumin even picks up a few new nicknames, like the Small Melon Demon and the Explosion Freak, but as Kazuma carries her away, she tells him to remember the names of the idiots who give her cringy titles so she can blow them up later. Even so, Beldia himself survives the blast, and while most of his forces are reduced to ash, he laughs out of amusement and claims that he will handle them himself. Kazuma is worried they will lose since the city is full of beginners, but the people assure him that their ace will show up and handle Beldia himself. Convinced they can win, the civilians rush at Beldia, but the Dullahan flings his own head into the air and uses the elevated view to track everyone's movements, before finishing them all with ease. Seeing this terror, the townspeople believe that Kiyoya will show up to save them. But Kazuma realizes he messed up, as because of him, Kiyoya is not here. Beldia steps forward and swings his sword, but Darkness clashes his sword with hers, creating a standstill. Kazuma urges her to retreat, but she refuses, saying that she's willing to get touched all over if it means saving the people, which only disgusts Beldia more than anything. She then charges at the Dullahan and starts swinging like she's Zoro. But while she looks like she might land a hit, all of her strikes miss horribly, and Beldia can only be confused while Darkness and Kazuma are embarrassed. With no remorse, Beldia slices through her armor with ease, and while Kazuma begs her to run away, Darkness refuses as an honored crusader. However, she also expresses shamelessly how she is enjoying getting her clothes torn apart bit by bit, exposing her plots to everyone, which creeps out the Dullahan. In that moment, Kazuma shoots his water magic at Beldia, which the Dullahan dodges and gets Darkness wet, but Kazuma uses that chance to freeze him and use his steel to get his sword. To his surprise, it did nothing, and Beldia informs him that Kazuma's level is way beneath his for his steel to work, and he walks towards Kazuma. When Darkness tries to intervene, Beldia attacks her some more, while Kazuma is desperately grasping onto his gamer knowledge to remember a Dullahan's weakness. In that moment, he remembers his game sessions in Elden Ring and exposes Beldia's weakness against water, encouraging everyone to shoot water at him, forcing him to dodge. As Beldia keeps evading, Kazuma turns to Aqua and urges her to step in, saying even someone as useless as her should be able to control water. Of all times to take offense, Aqua chooses this moment and wastes precious seconds forcing Kazuma to apologize. Only then does she raise her hands and channel her power. Seeing the spell forming, Beldia tries to retreat, but Darkness holds his leg to stop his escape. It gives an opening for Aqua to unleash a divine flood so massive that it floods the battlefield and even damages the city's outer walls. With Beldia severely weakened, Kazuma finally manages to steal his head using steel. With his head in hand, Kazuma has devious intentions and starts a football game with all the adventurers, juggling around Beldia's head like Prime Messi. Aqua finishes things off by purifying the rest of his body into nothingness, and when the dust settles, Darkness drops to her knees to pray for the fallen comrades who once accepted her into their party. However, she quickly realizes they're all still alive because Aqua has already used her powers to revive them. And Darkness feels both embarrassed and awkward after getting her beautiful, dramatic moment taken from her. Kazuma tells her to relax since she loves being embarrassed anyway, but she argues that this isn't the kind of humiliation she's into. The next day, Kazuma is just grateful to wake up alive, while the people in the guild are buzzing with celebration as adventurers toast their massive victory. Just then, Luna arrives and announces that Kazuma's party is credited for defeating a Devil King general in Beldia, earning them a reward of 300 million Eris. Kazuma immediately calls a team meeting and declares that with this kind of dough, he's retiring for good and planning to goon on his dollar bills. The girls protest and remind him that his goal is to defeat the Devil King, but Kazuma brushes it off and doubles down on the retirement plan. However, just as the idea starts to sound real, Luna drops a bomb, informing them that while they receive a massive reward for taking down one of the Devil King's generals, they are also responsible for paying for the damage caused by Aqua's flood. The repair bill ends up 400 million Eris, higher than the reward, which dumps them straight back into debt. Hearing that, the girls speak with hope about how their adventure is merely just starting, while Kazuma realizes that his life is truly a living comedy. Some days later, winter arrives, and all the other adventurers hole up indoors to escape the cold, while enjoying the riches they got from saving. Meanwhile, Kazuma is stressed over how broke he is after what happened, and Aqua only makes it worse by reminding him that a beautiful goddess like her is being forced to sleep in a stable, but he snaps back at this hoe, pointing out that they're drowning in debt because of her mess in the first place. He adds that his eyelashes even froze solid in the cold, and that if they keep sleeping in the stables, he's going to turn into Elsa. Aqua dodges responsibility and argues that if she hadn't used her spell, they'd all be dead, so they should be thanking her and licking her toes to show appreciation instead. However, Kazuma turns the logic that since the credit is all hers, then so are the debts, and he turns to walk away and tells her to figure out the debt on her own. She immediately drops to her knees and begs him to come up with a solution. Just then, Darkness and Megumin show up, and they ask if he has found them any work yet, but Kazuma admits he hasn't even started looking. They notice that the rest of the guild is busy celebrating, since everyone else makes a ton of money helping defeat Beldia. As they browse the quest board, Darkness spots a request to hunt white wolves for 1 million Eris, and the idea of being mauled by them very much excites her, but Kazuma shuts that down instantly. Megumin then points out a quest about one-punch bears and starts hyping up her own one-shot explosion, but Kazuma rejects that too for being way too dangerous. He then notices a scouting request involving something ominous called the Destroyer, decides that sounds like a nightmare waiting to happen, and finally chooses a quest to hunt snow sprites that pays 100,000 Eris per target. As Megumin starts rambling about the dangers they might face, Aqua wanders off to prepare, while Darkness gets excited simply because the quest has snow in the name. Later, the group gathers and heads into a snowy forest where the snow sprites gather. Kazuma hacks away at the small snow creatures as they scatter around, while Aqua cheerfully bottles them up to use later as magical mini-fridges for her booze during summer. Meanwhile, the little explosion freak blows up a bunch of them, and then collapses into the snow like usual, and when Kazuma checks on her, she proudly reports that she takes out 9 sprites, and even levels up. Kazuma starts to realize that hunting these things is way too easy, considering the reward they're about to earn, and wonders why no one else is willing to do it. But that's when Darkness senses something lurking in the woods, and Aqua explains that most adventurers avoid this quest because of the Snow Sprite Master, also known as the Winter Shogun. In that moment, the Winter Shogun appears, donning his samurai armor like Prime Jin Sekai. Aqua adds that this thing is so strong that even the Devil King puts a bounty on its head. While Kazuma is internally panicking, Darkness charges forward with excitement, only for her sword to shatter instantly. Aqua hurriedly explains that the Winter Shogun takes a form shaped by his enemy's imagination, and since Kazuma is from Japan, the samurai look is basically his fault. Realizing how bad this situation is, Aqua releases the captured sprites and orders everyone to drop their weapons and beg the Shogun to forgive them. Seeing a goddess bow, Kazuma and Megumin comply, but Darkness stubbornly refuses to kneel. In a panic, Kazuma rushes over to force her down, forgetting he's still holding his sword. The Shogun takes that as a hostile move and, without hesitation, slices Kazuma's head from its body. The next thing he knows, he wakes up in the afterlife again, where the goddess Eris greets him gently and expresses sympathy for his unfortunate end. He immediately recognizes her as Aqua's junior, and notes how much kinder and more empathetic she is compared to her annoying senior. When Eris offers to send him back to Japan for a peaceful life, Kazuma asks if she can place him into a rich family, have a harem in the future, and make him look hotter than Gojo. He even starts venting about his dog water adventurers party, his horrible luck, and everything that's gone wrong so far, hoping to squeeze more favors out of her. However, in the middle of it, he suddenly breaks down in tears and realizes how much he actually misses his beloved friends, as even though they drive him nuts, he admits that life with them is strangely fun, and that he genuinely comes to care about them. Just as he's about to leave, Aqua's voice booms through the afterlife, demanding his soul back. When Aqua attempts to resurrect him, Eris explains that the rules don't allow someone to be revived in the same world more than once, but Aqua immediately calls nonsense and starts trash-talking her junior for making up rules on the spot. Furious, Aqua threatens to expose the goddess Eris's biggest secret, which is that she uses pads to make her melons look bigger, but Eris panics, turns bright red, and reluctantly agrees to bend the rules. A magic circle forms around Kazuma, and Eris asks him to keep this little secret once he returns, which makes him flustered. The next moment, he wakes up back with the others and has Megumin and Darkness hugging him in relief, while Aqua smugly demands that he worship her for saving his life. Still annoyed, Kazuma refuses to thank her, thinking about how much more of a goddess Eris is compared to her. This infuriates Aqua, and when she tries to deliver him a knuckle sandwich, Darkness steps in to break it up. Kazuma then learns that he dies in a particularly brutal way to the Winter Shogun, and he decides they're clearly not strong enough to take on winter quests like this yet. When they return to the guild, Aqua proudly reveals that she secretly keeps one snow sprite. Kazuma tries to take it so he can turn it in for the reward, but Aqua refuses, saying she wants to use it as her personal fridge. Fully reminded of just how broken his party is, Kazuma can only sigh and think to himself that Eris seems like a real goddess, while his own teammates are just a bunch of knobheads who make him want to do a backflip into a volcano. Some days later, outside of the stables, Aqua is warming up her body near a campfire, as the weather blows cold. When a sudden gust nearly snuffs the flames, she reaches for Kazuma's old tracksuit, the one he brought from his previous life, and tries to toss it into the fire to make herself warmer. But Kazuma immediately smacks her on the head and shuts that idea down, yelling that it is literally the only keepsake he has left from his previous life. Aqua whines that there is nothing else to burn, and if he will not sacrifice his precious outfit, then he should just warm her up himself. Right on cue, the fire fizzles out completely, and while Aqua sulks dramatically, Kazuma decides that it is time to find another place to life. Not long after, the two of them pay a visit to Whiz's magic shop, and before stepping inside, Kazuma warns Aqua to behave for once. However, the moment they step inside, Aqua grabs Whiz by the collar and starts yelling about how unfair it is that Whiz gets to live comfortably in a shop while she is freezing in a stable. Kazuma hurriedly smacks Aqua and pulls her away from the poor, busty leech. Once things settle down, Aqua demands tea in the rudest way possible, and while Witch is preparing it, Kazuma recalls and reminds himself that despite the badonkadonks in the human feature, Whiz is actually a lich. He goes on to say that Whiz is gentle by nature and used to guide wandering souls to the afterlife, but since Kazuma's party has taken over that job, she is able to open her own shop and live quietly in the town. When the tea arrives, Aqua is shocked by how good it tastes. Though she still treats Whiz coldly, just because she is undead. Meanwhile, Kazuma mentions that he has some unused skill points and wants Whiz to teach him a few lich techniques. Aqua spits out her tea and calls him an idiot for wanting to learn undead skills instead of asking her, a literal goddess, to teach him. Kazuma fires back that Whiz's abilities can actually keep him alive in real fights, considering that no one else have undead skills in their arsenal. Whiz asks what Aqua means by being a goddess, and that is when Aqua proudly introduces herself as a goddess of the Axis Order, but Whiz tenses up hearing that. Kazuma tries calming her down, but Whiz explains that she has encountered more than enough unstable people from the Axis cult, and that they are all psychos. Realizing Aqua is the leader of it, Whiz seriously questions whether Aqua belongs in a padded room. Deeply offended, Aqua immediately starts harassing her again, forcing Kazuma to step in and break things up for the second time. Then, Whiz casually mentions that she is impressed that they managed to defeat Beldia. When Kazuma asks how she even knows that, she reveals that she is one of the Devil King's generals. Aqua instantly tackles her, but Whiz desperately explains that her role is purely defensive, as she only maintains the barrier around the Devil King's castle, and has never harmed anyone. Since she is not actually causing trouble, there is no bounty on her head. She adds that if someone were to defeat all the generals, the barrier would eventually fall. Aqua confidently claims she can tear down the barrier whenever she wants, but she still looks tempted to exorcise Whiz purely out of spite for insulting her religion. Whiz reassures them that she has no hostility toward the party, even after they take down Beldia. She even mentions that Beldia used to pull creepy stunts, like pretending his head falls off like a bowling just so he can sneak a peek at her creamy plots. Changing the subject, Whiz agrees to teach Kazuma a skill and chooses Drain Touch, which allows the user to siphon magical energy. She demonstrates it on Aqua, but Aqua resists out of pettiness until Kazuma smacks her again and tells her to stop being difficult. While Kazuma practices the new ability, Aqua suddenly grabs Whiz's hand and attempts to purify her on the spot. The spell almost works before Kazuma yanks Aqua away at the last second. Right after that chaos, the group receives a job request involving a haunted mansion that needs to be cleared out. When they arrive, Aqua stands outside with her eyes shut, striking dramatic poses and pretending to scare off evil spirits. Everyone else ignores her completely and walks inside to start cleaning, while Aqua continues performing her little exorcism routine to absolutely no one. That night, Kazuma happily claims a room for himself and relishes the luxury of having a real bed again. Feeling safe with Aqua around, he relaxes until her screaming wakes him up after someone steals a drink she has been saving for months. Enraged, Aqua goes berserk and begins firing turn undead spells throughout the mansion, blasting anything that looks even remotely like Casper's cousin. Later, Kazuma wakes up needing to use the bathroom, and is greeted by Annabelle herself sitting in the corner of his room, spooking him out, and he looks away, refusing to look back. However, when he eventually does turn back, he sees even more possessed dolls surrounding him, so he quickly bolts in terror and barges into Aqua's room for safety, only to find Megumin there instead. Megumin explains that she sees the dolls too, and needs Aqua to protect her while she takes a leak. But now with darkness and Aqua nowhere to be found, being Ghostbusters, the two of them argue over who gets to go first and piss. They start wrestling each other, but their argument is cut short when the dolls show up at the window, sending both of them screaming and sprinting down the hall. From their escape, they reach the bathroom, where Kazuma keeps watch for Megumin, who does her potty business while calling out for him every 5 seconds out of fear of being left behind. However, from the corner of his eyes, Kazuma spots the possessed dolls starting to creep in, and urges Megumin to hurry up. Out of desperation, he rips the door open and drags her away into hiding. Out of fear, Megumin starts reciting her explosion magic, but Kazuma stops her to avoid his new home getting destroyed and instead decides to face them head-on. However, when he opens the door, he hits Aqua in the head, who has been exorcising the demons all night with darkness, and knocks her out. The next day, Kazuma and Aqua go to the guild to collect their reward for clearing the mansion of little Chuckies and Annabelles. However, Luna explains that the ghosts only flood into the house because someone places a magical barrier around the local cemetery, preventing the spirits from resting properly. Kazuma slowly turns and glares at Aqua, who admits she does it so she does not have to purify the cemetery every day. Realizing the mess is their fault, they shamefully give up the reward. Later, while Kazuma tidies up the yard of the mansion, Whiz quietly stops by to thank him for his help. Just as things finally seem peaceful, Kazuma hears Aqua telling Darkness to toss his precious tracksuit into the fireplace for warmth. He immediately sprints inside to stop them, already knowing his peaceful night is about to be ruined yet again. Some nights later, the group is chilling in their new mansion, where Megumin and Darkness are in the middle of an intense chess battle, while Kazuma lounges comfortably on the couch. Out of nowhere, Aqua marches over and demands that he hand over the best seat in the room, claiming she deserves it since she is the highest level in the party. Kazuma points out that her stats have not improved even once since day 1, but Aqua proudly insists that it is only because they have been maxed from the start. Seeing that, Kazuma gives her the couch spot, but not out of generosity, but because he realizes that the reason she's such a moronic idiot is because her intelligence stats never improved, no matter how much she levels up, and that makes Kazuma feel sorry for her. The following day, Kazuma wanders through town with nothing better to do and notices a couple of adventurers, Dust and Keith, skulking around in a back alley like they're looking for their dealers. When he asks what they are plotting, they quickly pull him in and explain that in the alley, there is a plotful, hidden cafe run by succubuses that could give men happy dreams. That alone is enough to hook Kazuma's interest, and he decides to tag along. Inside, he is immediately greeted by a lineup of succubuses with specifications of Mia Khalifa, and they can't help but feel their Slim Jim turn into Fat Johnny. A succubus greets them, and she takes Kazuma into a private booth, where the succubus clocks that this is Kazuma's first time coming here, so she explains to him the whole ordeal. She expresses how she understands that adventurers sometimes sleep in stables, full of stress, and need a little bit of help releasing their stress, so the succubus created this place as a way to help adventurers, while they get their goon remains as a trade-off. Hearing that, Kazuma thinks to himself that this is the best thing ever created since holes in donuts, and the succubus then hands him a form to fill out. She explains that he needs to put down the exact scenario he wants, including the dance partner he wants to shake the bed in his dream with. Kazuma asks whether this could be illegal, but she assures him that since it's a dream, anything goes. With that, Kazuma eagerly fills out the form with exactly what he wants, from the roleplay, scenario, and the exact plot specifications of his partner for the night, but the succubus warns him not to drink too much for the night, as it will prevent them from showing him the dreams. Back at the mansion, Kazuma walks into what looks like a full-on seafood feast, and Darkness explains that her family sends over a crate of luxury crab to celebrate their move. Everyone is already elbow-deep in cracked shells, and the moment Kazuma tastes one, he nearly has his clothes blow up like he's in Food Wars from how good it is. Just then, Aqua creates an outrageous dish by combining her booze with the crab, and when they see how good it looks, they all want it. However, Kazuma remembers what the succubus said about drinking, realizing that if he gets drunk, his carefully planned, creamy dream goes straight off the rails. Still, watching the others laugh and enjoy themselves makes him hesitate, as a part of him wonders if he should just ditch the fantasy and enjoy the beautiful night with his friends. But in the end, temptation wins. He excuses himself early and heads to bed, only to find himself way too nervous to sleep, knowing that he's about to get some action. Figuring a hot bath might calm him down, he soaks in the tub and drifts off to sleep. Suddenly, he wakes up and sees something moving behind the door. Darkness steps in with all her glory, and realizing that the dream is activated, Kazuma greets her like he's ready for the humpy. Scared, Darkness drops to her knees, unable to meet his eyes, while Kazuma silently marvels that the darkness in his dream looks like the real thing. Before she can question why he is there, Kazuma steps out of the bath, bravely shows her his Excalibur, and casually asks her to scrub his back. Darkness freezes, as the situation matches her own fantasy, as a pain-loving freak. And while she wants to jump out the window to escape, her degeneracy makes her go through with it. Darkness asks worryingly what would happen if the others find out, and Kazuma answers boldly that they all can join and take turns on his joystick, which scares Darkness. Then, she starts washing his back while flustered, and when she's finished, he asks her to dry him without using a towel. While she initially rejects, her consciousness once more pushes her to go with it, and she steps closer to dry him off. But just as it's about to get spicy, Aqua's voice rings through the mansion, screaming about an intruder. Kazuma snaps out of his fantasy out of anger that his dream is disturbed, and goes after Aqua while wearing nothing but a towel. But then, tangled in Aqua's house-wide holy barrier, is a succubus. It hits him harder than Truck-kun that this is not a dream, and that he had just pushed Darkness into her limits of pure degeneracy. When Aqua prepares to purify the succubus on the spot, Kazuma intervenes, trying to help the poor girl escape. The succubus, panicking and blaming herself for messing up her first job, even begs him to let her get exorcised. Darkness then rushes in, sees Kazuma clinging to the succubus, and immediately assumes he is under some kind of charm spell, which she suspects is the reason why Kazuma was suddenly acting like Johnny Bravo earlier. Without giving him time to explain, Aqua, Megumin, and Darkness team up and beat the daylights out of him, while the succubus runs free. The next morning, Darkness asks Kazuma if he doesn't remember anything, and he says that he didn't, but in truth, he plays dumb, claiming he has been completely brainwashed and has no memory of the previous night's events. Darkness, still flustered and clearly overthinking everything, also pretends nothing happened, relieved that he supposedly does not remember. Suddenly, Luna announces an emergency to the whole town that a destroyer is heading towards them. While townsfolk rush to gather their belongings, Aqua and Megumin are already halfway packed, mentally preparing to abandon Axel. Megumin bluntly calls the destroyer a guaranteed death sentence, and Darkness grimly explains that the fortress flattened anything in its path. She adds that if no one intervened, the town wouldn't just be damaged, it would be like it didn't exist. However, Kazuma decides to become a Chad and refuses to let some Transformers wannabe nonsense destroy the mansion they fought hard to get. Inside the guild hall, the atmosphere is pure panic. During the emergency briefing, Luna announces that the destroyer will reach Axel in under an hour. Someone asks if there is any known method to stop it, only to be told that the fortress has already crushed its own creators, which means that there is no manual, no off switch, no secret weakness. The group briefly laments that they might have stood a chance if Kyoyo were present, but since Kazuma has pawned off his sword, that option is dead in the water. Most of the people think that escape is the best thing to do, and Chris suggests that they have to do that, but Darkness still insists on fighting back. Chris then turns to Kazuma to ask if he has any bright ideas, and after thinking for a minute, he asks Aqua if she can break down the destroyer's barrier. Hearing that gives hope to the townspeople that they may be able to do something, and now they discuss that they need massive firepower to take down the monster. When they hear firepower, they all look towards Megumin, who they dub as the crazy midget, and while she's willing to fight for them, she asks them not to give her weird nicknames. However, she adds that her firepower might not be enough to take down the destroyer by herself. But in that moment, Whiz pops up, and everyone cheers at the sight of her. Kazuma is confused by why they cheer for her, and Dust explains to him that before she opened up shop, Whiz was a renowned master arch-wizard in her past, which Kazuma knows is connected to her being a leech. With that, the adventurers prepare, where workers hurriedly throw together makeshift defenses to go against the destroyer. Far facing the distance, Darkness volunteers to stand at the front line, prepared to face the incoming machine head-on. Kazuma tries to pull her back, warning her that even she cannot survive a direct hit from something that size. For once, Darkness drops the bravado and tells him her real name, Lalatina, and that she is a noble entrusted with protecting this region. Understanding her compassion and courage, Kazuma chooses to stand beside her, but not without teasing her for her real cute name. Then, when the mobile fortress destroyer finally comes into view, its sheer scale silences everyone, looming over the town like Godzilla looming over Tokyo. But then, Aqua climbs atop the city wall and unleashes a sacred break, cracking the magical barrier surrounding the fortress. With its defenses down, the mages prepare to strike. Whiz readies her spell, while Megumin hesitates, visibly shaken, until Kazuma gives her the push she needs, telling her to show the world what explosion magic is capable of. The two of them fire at once, their combined magic halting the fortress just short of the city, and cheers erupt across the walls, relief washing over the defenders. But suddenly, the destroyer announces it is initiating self-destruction. Hearing that, panic spreads, but Darkness sprints toward the fortress with unhinged enthusiasm, thrilled by the prospect of throwing herself into certain doom. Thinking that she's sacrificing herself, several adventurers charge after her, some admitting they are mainly trying to protect the town and its cultural landmarks, like the Succubus-kun Cafe. While Megumin is left behind, completely drained after casting her spell, Kazuma, Aqua, and Whiz rush into the fortress, searching desperately for a control room that might stop the countdown. Deep inside, they find a skeleton seated on a throne, and Aqua calmly notes that the man died peacefully. A journal nearby reveals the truth that this man is the engineer who built the fortress. Ordered to create a weapon with limitless energy, he is given the power source by adventurers themselves, and once completed, the weapon goes berserk and turns on its own city. With nowhere to escape, the creator seals himself inside and waits for death. Eventually, the group locates Coronatite, the core powering the destroyer. Whiz proposes teleporting it out, but her mana reserves are too low, so she asks Kazuma if she can ask for his mana. She asks if he can suck it out, and Kazuma agrees without hesitation, thinking that it's a kiss, but instead gets himself sucked out dry of his mana. In that moment, the core starts beeping like it's about to really blow, and Whiz worries that the teleport might drop the core somewhere populated. But Kazuma assures her that he will take the blame. With that assurance, Whiz moves the core far away from there, effectively saving the town from its doom. But before they get to celebrate, the fortress begins to overheat, and Whiz explains that the remaining stored energy will still trigger a massive blast. Being out of mana, Kazuma cannot supply more, and Aqua's divine energy would just purify Whiz. But as everything seems hopeless, the Mohawk guy, Ruffian, shows up carrying an exhausted Megumin. Kazuma uses Drain Touch to siphon mana from Aqua and pass it to Megumin, and with one last, desperate charge up, Megumin unleashes an explosion so enormous it obliterates the fortress entirely, reducing the mobile fortress destroyer to drifting debris. Once the dust settles, Axel slowly returns to life. People come back to their homes, shops reopen, and the streets fill with noise again. The town breathes a collective sigh of relief, right up until the knights from the royal capital arrive. When Kazuma and the others gather at the guild to meet them, they expect to be rewarded, but the knights' tone is anything but celebratory. A prosecutor steps forward and announces that the core Kazuma teleports away and appears inside the local governor's mansion, destroying the whole place completely. Before Kazuma can even begin to explain what actually happened, the prosecutor accuses him of a crime, making his miserable life as an adventurer even worse. If you watch this anime recap until the end and want the Season 2 recap, comment down below next season, and if you love anime recaps like this, watch this video.